At the piano roll today in FL Studio. Several ways you can get to the piano roll. You can hit F7 on your keyboard. You can also hit this third icon up here. That'll get you to it. And if you're in the step sequencer, you can right click on a channel and get to the piano roll. And now I'm just going to zoom this out a little bit. So let's take a look at some of the functionality of what you can do in the piano roll. Let's start at the options menu up here. We have our file menu, pretty self-explanatory, our edit menu, and let me get a couple notes down on the piano roll. And let's take a look at the edit menu, and we see that we have shift left, shift right, transpose up, transpose down, and let's just look at the shortcuts over here that are to the right of them. So if I highlight all of these, and let's just do shift up, you can see they move up the piano roll. I can do shift down, they'll move down the piano roll, shift left, shift right. So you can see all those, you're basically, moving the notes around the piano roll. And all the shortcuts are there to the right. Let's get into the tools a little bit. There's a lot you can do here from the tools, and these tools can also be accessed from this wrench icon here. It's just all the same stuff. For example, let's just do quick legato. So take a look at the notes right now, and I'm going to do quick legato. And you can see that the notes are now all tied together. That's what legato means. It means if you have notes that are separated, legato makes them all together. Da da da. Versus staccato, which is very short and abrupt. And so there's actually this articulate tool here as well. And you can see up here in the options section, there's legato, portato, and staccato. They're all Italian words. Portato is basically in between legato and staccato. And so it's how you articulate your notes. So it's really good for different styles of music and adding a human element to your electronic music. And so quantizing, let me get some more notes kind of just down here on the piano roll. And I'm going to do a quantize. And now there's quick quantize, which basically when you do it, it's just going to go to its default quantize settings and do whatever that is. It's good if you want to do something quick and dirty. But the full quantize menu is here. And I typically go into this because you generally want something very specific. You can see all these red lines here are where things get quantized to. And if you're like me, you think these red lines are being dictated by the snap function, which is up here, the horseshoe green shape. Turns out they're not. It's actually dictated by the template over here. So right now, it's just the default template. But I can do eighths only, and you can see, okay, now those quantized lines are further apart. And the start and end times of my quantized notes are going to be dictated by where those red vertical lines are. So you can see as I kind of move this start time around here, things are getting shuffled around to either line up more or less with these red lines, depending on what you're doing. And you have all your regular kind of envelope controls here as well. So that's where you quantize things. And there's some other really cool tools in here as well. And really, I would just say basically highlight your notes and spend some time messing with each of these. But I'm actually going to let me hop into stamp here real quick. And stamp is a way that instead of hitting individual notes, you can stamp entire scales, entire chords. Just be aware of this up here, only one, versus if I have it highlighted as only one and I do a stamp, let's do a major chord, right? Then it goes, I'll stamp one major chord and then I go back to doing individual notes, versus if I do stamp and I take off only one, and I go stamp and I do a major chord again, I'll be doing multiple major chords in a row. So that's really cool. Now let's just try one of these tools. We have these highlighted right now. Let's go to strum. Like if you're a guitar player and you want to strum. So right now all these notes are lining up like I'm hitting a chord on a piano. But I can mess with this tool here, and it doesn't seem to be doing anything. Let me make sure it's actually highlighted. Let me take off that. and there it goes. So you can kind of see there, I'm moving the notes left to right, as if I was strumming a chord on a guitar. So that's a pretty neat tool. There's some other stuff that you can kind of mess with. So there, stamp we already talked about, right? So there's all your chords and scales that you can do. You can fill in steps as well. It's a really useful just tool if you want to do stuff. If you want to try to do a whole arrangement real quickly instead of having to click out each individual note, you can put out sequences and chords. Here's our view section. So we have like view time segments. Right now we have beats. So look at the light gray versus the dark gray. Right now we have light gray, dark gray, light gray, dark gray. We have 4 of them all within one bar. So that means that we are viewing the beats right now. But I could go to bars and pay attention to the light gray from dark gray. I go dark gray, light gray, dark gray, light gray. So that's view there. There's also, for example, like right now I have all the keyboard notes shown, which is really good if you're learning keyboard or you're learning music theory. But I could, for example, I can disengage that. Right now I have all notes, but if I go to none, then they all go away. So that's there. There's some helpers here as well, like also if you're learning music theory, trying to learn the keyboard, such as scale highlighting. There's also ghost channels and editable ghosts, which is, if you're looking at the piano roll, remember the piano roll is really pulling in from, like right now we're actually on the kick drum and the step sequencer, and all we're seeing is all the notes that are related to the kick drum channel. But when you work with ghost notes, you can actually start seeing the notes from other channels in the step sequencer. You can also do things what's called editable ghost notes, which you can actually edit ghost notes from other channels in the step sequencer, even if you're just working on one channel at a time in the piano roll. So that's kind of cool. I don't use it too often. It's handy once in a while, but most of the time I want to just work on one instrument. But it's really good if you have, like, say, a kick drum and a bass guitar and you want to line them up. Then it might be good to have your kick drum and then have your bass guitar as editable ghosts, so you can see how the rhythm section is lining up. And snap I've talked about in several other videos, but you can see whether you're snapping to your steps or your beats. It's basically are you snapping to larger quantities or shorter quantities of times. And you can also, and really all these things we can get to, as we see almost in all of FL Studio, everything that's in the options menu is also going to be throughout the entire thing. So everything that's in this options menu is pretty much accessible up here, down here, over here. So we'll see that momentarily. And there's some select tools here. Those are some zoom tools, which are pretty self-explanatory. I usually just use the page up and page down. So if I just do page up, let's do it on my computer, page up, page down, it's a left-right scroll. And then for a vertical scroll, I go over here to this top right corner. So you can see that's how you get the vertical scroll. Here's the tools menu, and we really talked about this. This is the same thing that's over here at the tools on the menu bar. There's our snap. There's a snap function again. This is our stamp icon here. So we already looked at that. That's the stamps. Pencil tool, paint tool, and paint plus. So I'm really zoomed out here. Let me kind of zoom back in. And if I just do paint, I'm just going to hold Control left click. And if I do paint plus, it's really just a different quantity of time that paint plus does, and it's tied into the snap function. And so, most of the time I just use paint. But paint plus could be cool if you want to kind of use this in connection with the snap function, if you really specifically know how long or short your notes are. This is our delete, our mute, our slice. Let's just try slicing something real quick. So there's our slice tool, and we'll just kind of left click, drag down through it, and now we made that into 2 notes. Our select tool. There's our zoom, which we already talked about. Playback, play pause. So that's a pretty quick rundown of the piano roll. let me kind of think here if there's anything else. For example, there's a portamento and there's a slide here. Really, I like to just actually go into these notes. So you can double left click on any note in the piano roll, and you get these note properties here. And actually, you can see there's slide and portamento right here, and those are somewhat similar to what we talked about before, the legato, staccato. It's really an articulation of your note. For those of you that are familiar or took band lessons or orchestra lessons in school, I'm sure you heard your music teacher talk about these different terms. And we have our regular modulation wheels here. We have velocity and panning, all the standard things you would need. And then I guess my final point for the piano roll would be down here. So we also have that same functionality down here. We can do velocity, note release, filter cutoffs, panning, volume, pitch, all your main controls you can do in these down here, and you can move them up, down. You can pull up these different graphs. So that's cool. So you can kind of adjust things in the control center down here, and they each, as I guess we saw it with the velocity, right? They're all corresponding to a note up here. So you can, right? You can highlight this chord here, and it's gonna take you to the relative velocity line down there. So that's and also there's just a scroll bar up here I should call out, so you can kind of scroll along your piano roll. But that's really everything in the piano roll in a nutshell. So I hope you found that useful, and I hope that gets you up and running and using the piano roll on FL Studio. And thanks for watching.